Hi, we're live. So, thank you everyone for coming. This is the launch event for the Common Press. We're an intersectional bookshop. We felt that there was like a need in the book industry to kind of have a more diverse representation of different identities, especially at like the book selling level, because obviously there's been like a big push within publishing, but in book selling there's like far less diversity, and so that's kind of what led this initiative here. And yes, thank you all for coming. I'm going to hand this over to Otamere and Sam. Thank you.
Right, hello everyone. I will just do some short intros. For the uninitiated, which will be most of you because I'm not famous, I'm Otamere Guobadia. I'm a multidisciplinary writer. My work mainly focuses on love, sex, desire, queerness, race, art, how these things constellate and complicate each other in pop culture. It's all very incredibly sentimental work. That's my elevator pitch, which I've obviously rehearsed because I can just vomit it out now. But yeah, I'll be doing, just some context, I'll be doing a reading from an upcoming book that I'm working on with United Agents, which the working title is Thoughts on a Body Too Long Curated. But yeah, that's a little context I'll give you, and then I'll read the preface when I'm doing it. But I'm actually going second. My very lovely friend Sam will be going first, but Sam will tell you a bit more about himself on his own microphone.
Oh, I got my own microphone, yeah.
I think you're so special, don't you?
Thank you. I'm Sam. What am I? I am an erotic artist. I have an erotica platform that I've run for about 5 years, and also a writer. So I published my first book last year in the middle of COVID, and yeah, it's my first book, and it was kind of like sitting. It's a collection of stories and poetry, and it was sort of like waiting to happen, and then COVID ended up being like this moment for me to be like, okay, now I can't do anything else, so I'm gonna turn this into a physical thing. And it was also a great opportunity for me to hire some queer talent to do it. So I hired a queer designer in Spain and a queer editor in Germany, and then we basically made it happen over about a period of 6 to 7 months. It was like very stressful publishing your own book, but it ended up being like really cool and really way more successful than I thought it was going to be. We had to do like a few print runs on it, and I remember like I made like some stupid TikToks about it, and then that went viral, and then I sold more books, and it was just, and then it started reaching audiences that I didn't expect it to reach. It's very gay. So then obviously like the TikTok market like opened up a whole new thing. But in a way for me that was positive because it meant that people that necessarily wouldn't be a part of that world got to see into that world. I'm gonna read a little bit. I'm gonna read like a chapter from this book. I'm going to go first, right?
You are going first.
Yeah, it took me ages to work out what to read from here because
there was much debate about what to read from the book.
Yes, seriously, because it is a bit all over the place, and it's a collection of stories over like 5 years and me traveling the world. As a sort of like lost gay artist,
Lost fag.
Yeah, lost fag. You know, love and sex and trials and tribulations and all that stuff. So I wanted to. Are these children? That would be so
Oh my
funny.
god! Imagine if you read the other thing.
That would be so funny. Hi.
Hi.
Oh my gosh. Sorry, there was like a couple of stories I was like toying between, and one of them would definitely not be appropriate for this age group.
Hi.
Hi.
Oh my god, are you cute?
No, I'm nervous. Yeah, it's very adult.
Don't be nervous.
Okay. The subject matter for this particular story is quite adult, but I don't know if she can speak yet, so maybe she don't think she'll. Okay. Just wanted to check. So, hang on.
Oh,
Bye. Bye-bye. So cute.
I need some baby.
So I'm going to read a story that I wrote about 4 years ago in New York. And I just want to give a little trigger warning, because like a sexual assault trigger warning for anyone here. It felt like the most appropriate story to read tonight. I don't know. I think it's a good conversation starter, and I don't know, maybe you can connect with it in some way. I don't want to bring everyone's evening down either, so we'll see how we go. It's called I Didn't Say No. I ran down to collect the pizza I had ordered on Uber Eats. We hadn't eaten all night, having been trapped in the exhibit. We were ravenous. I was pretty exhausted. The exhibition had been open for 3 days already, and I'd already had a whirlwind week in New York. I skipped down the front steps of the hotel when I saw them, like two lizards creeping into the hotel, slithering their way into the front entrance, grins on their faces and a young boy on their arms. My heart rate quickened. It felt like it was going to burst through my ribcage with a sharp jolt, and I couldn't quite tell whether my blood ran cold or hot. My breathing was shortened as I tried to collect my thoughts and to process what was happening. They have a house in Miami. They have a house in Miami. I had not even thought about it. I was exhibiting at the one gay art fair in Miami, and they had a house here. It was inevitable that they would be here, but the fact had entirely slipped my mind. I grabbed my pizza and swiftly passed them, turning my face away as to not let them see me. As hard as I might have tried, I couldn't avoid them completely. My name was all over the exhibit, and we were bound to run into each other at some point in the evening. As quickly as I could, I returned to my exhibit room, which was also my hotel room, and I dropped the pizza. My friend was talking to me, but the words vanished in the thick haze of panic which had come over me. I can't believe who I've just seen here, I spluttered out. I could barely find the words, and I couldn't process what I was meant to do about the situation. What? Who is here? My friend asked, confused. I looked panicked and flustered. It's a long story. I didn't think they would be here. I haven't even thought about them since. I completely forgot they had a house here. They have a house in Miami and in Fire Island, and they live in New York. I remember they invited me to their house in Miami once. I completely forgot I didn't even know where to start. This was something I'd chosen, in a sense, to forget about, to move on from. I had left it behind, and here it was, arriving at my art exhibit. I stopped, my whole body still, and I tried to explain to my friend why I was reacting this way. We were hiding in the back of the exhibit. I needed to tell someone. Years ago, I used to go to a house on Fire Island as a house guest. These two men, them, would host a lot of boys there for free. We would simply stay there and enjoy the island. There was nothing untoward at the beginning, contrary to what you might think. And I had some amazing summers there. Until 2.5 years ago, I arrived on the island, and the frenzy of steroid-pumped cis white men who littered the island didn't really faze me anymore. The wild deer wandering the island was spectacular, and a complete contrast to the madness of the partying and the falseness of the people who spent their summers there. That being said, there is a beauty in the hedonism that is freely expressed on the island. It's a place where you can be gay without being judged, and that's probably one of the only things that you won't be judged for. I'm an INFPT on the Myers-Briggs type. I'm a bit of an introvert and often misunderstood in social situations, which can be difficult when you hop from party to party, introducing yourself to cardboard cutouts, one after the other. There's always the fear that you'll literally vomit if you have to say the words, "Hi, nice to meet you," one more time. My friend Frank and I arrived at the house. He was a tall and individual-looking guy, not the usual Fire Island kind of man. He always looked out for me while I was in New York, and so he was a great person to have around while on the island. You always need someone around you that you can trust while you're there. We went down to our room and put our bags down there. I wanted to sunbathe almost immediately. I'm typically British, so deprived of sunlight that when I get the chance to bronze up, I will jump at it. I grabbed my towel, put my Speedos on, and went out the garden to lay in the sun lounger. When we went out into the garden, we were greeted by the other house guests. There was a bubbly, very chatty girl, Mariana, a fairly quieter, taller gentleman, Alessio, and then a shorter, Latin-looking guy with a beard, Sebastio. He got up from his sun lounger and walked towards us to introduce himself. I couldn't help but notice his dick bulging in his Speedos. The veins were protruding through the thin yellow fabric, and it was quite clear he had fluffed himself moments before to make himself appear bigger. Occasionally, I would catch eyes with Frank. It was one of those moments you have with friends. You don't need words, just a look to acknowledge that something funny was going on. He started passing around a joint. I smoked weed, but not too much. I didn't want to get too fucked up before the day had even begun. Frank took a few drags, and then Sebastio brought the joint to me. He sat on my sun lounger and passed it to me. It was being passed around, but for some reason, he felt the need to bring it all the way over to me himself. I took a drag and then looked over at Frank. One look to suggest, this guy is really trying it with me, and we have literally only just walked in the door. And Frank just totally got it. Everyone took a few more drags, and then Sebastio came over to me again to offer me the blunt. I declined. He seemed confused but walked back to his sunbed. After a little while, I turned to Frank and mentioned that I was going to take off my Speedos. I really didn't want tan lines on my arse. I was shooting a bunch in New York, and I'd worked really hard leading up to the summer to get rid of these tan lines. He told me to just do it, so I did. I slipped my Speedos off in a very discreet way, and I laid on my front. I didn't feel embarrassed, and I was discreet as I could have been, being completely naked in front of a bunch of strangers. Later that day, we were all headed to drink and dance a little bit before dinner took place at 10 p.m. We ventured down to the dock where the bar was, and it was like Grindr had hemorrhaged all over the bay. Frank and I really just wanted to watch Drag Race, so we decided to forfeit the party and walk to Cherry Grove. You're leaving this party to go and watch television, Sebastio complained. Yes, we are, Frank and I both said at the same time while laughing at one another. We parted ways with the groups and headed towards Cherry Grove to watch some television. It was a lot of fun, and we were both very happy with our solid choice to leave the party. We headed back to the house to make it back in time for dinner at 10 p.m. Dinner at the house was always a very serious affair. Laid table, 3 courses, a lot of wine. The 2 older men who owned the house were now here. I always felt a bit nervous around them. I guess we were staying in their house, so I always felt like I owed them something or like I should be on my best behavior. You know when you used to go around your friend's house when you were a child and then you'd have dinner with their family and you'd always feel like somewhat uncomfortable? That's what I felt like in this house on Fire Island every time I visited. There was the usual dinner party chit-chat, people laughing at things that weren't funny just to keep the mood elevated, people talking about how exquisite the food was. This food was certainly not as exquisite nor sublime as people kept insisting. I was sat next to Alessio, a seemingly conservative character, Italian, living in New York, about to enroll on a master's course at Columbia. He was insufferably boring, but there was something about him that was charming and underwhelmingly sexy, which was quite refreshing on the island. He asked me what I did for work, which I always find a startling question, particularly at a dinner party. I began to explain about social media, Instagram, and how I made my income from a website I ran, which fans subscribed to. You'd think I was pitching for investment, but it was simply dinner party chatter. He had no idea what I was talking about and became more and more judgmental and rude, smirking to himself and mocking everything that came out of my mouth. I didn't want people to overhear his interrogations into what it was that I do with my life, so I simply said, look, we're from 2 different worlds. You don't have to understand what I do. It's fine. We're only existing in each other's lives. For one weekend, let's make it as sufferable as possible, please. He hardly understood what I said by the looks of it, and it was at that point I realized he seemed quite drunk. He proceeded to get up, wine glass in hand, and headed towards the kitchen to get more wine. The next thing I heard was the smash of the glass he had just walked through, shattering it into a million tiny pieces. He stopped in his tracks. The whole table turned and gasped, and he stumbled back. He proclaimed to everyone that he was fine, while pulling inch-long shards of glass out of his hand. Blood was now dripping everywhere, and there was a mild hysteria growing among everyone. Some were running to find bandages, some were running to find towels to mop up the blood, and the rest were consoling Alessio in his bleeding hand. I went over to inspect his hand. I thought it would need stitches, the cuts were deep, but everyone insisted he would just bandage them up and the wounds would just heal by themselves. And so we went with that. Alessio was embarrassed, and when I was alone with him again, he told me how stupid he felt, and that he was concerned he would no longer be remembered on the island as the tall, handsome Italian man, but as the Italian man who walked into a glass door. And I agreed with him and solidified in his mind, yes, he would indeed be remembered as the guy who walked into a glass door. After he was bandaged up, we all started getting ready to go to the underwear party in Cherry Groves. By the way, these are all real things. This is a real story, by the way. This is like a whole thing that happens there. At this point, we were all fairly drunk and were seemingly ready to go to a club where you check your clothes at the door. You check them in like little bags. It's like a whole thing. It's like it's the moment, yeah. After moments within arriving, I lost Frank. I assumed he'd gone to the dark room at the back, so I didn't go looking for him, obviously. I wandered around for a bit, got a few drinks, and then I found Alessio and Sebastião. Alessio seemed to have got over the embarrassment of his recent misfortune and decided to ask me about what it was that I did again. I couldn't tell whether this was his way of flirting or not, or just winding me up. Either way, I just decided to show him my Instagram. I thought it'd be easier than trying to explain. He took one look at it and said, "Do you ever want to get married?" I was fairly taken aback. I mean, I didn't want to get married that weekend, but maybe someday. "Well, not right now." "Why?" I said to him. Through a gargled laugh, he was like, "You'll never get married." I fell silent. I sort of couldn't believe he'd said it. But then I also know that that's what a lot of people think when they see my Instagram. So this was not new territory for me. "That's a pretty awful thing to say to someone," I said to him. He was laughing, and after a few seconds could tell he'd offended me. He apologized, and even though I could tell it wasn't sincere, I accepted it anyway, as I didn't want to ruin the night. After this rather uncomfortable exchange and feeling rather annoyed by it all, his friend Sebastião was suddenly by my side. He had some poppers which he was thrusting under my nose. I didn't mind. I inhaled, and within a fraction of a moment, my head was spinning. Alessio did some too. We both flung our heads around to meet each other and immediately started kissing. I don't know why I'm such a sadomasochist when it comes to men, but the meaner they are to me, the more I'm interested. I wasn't really enjoying the kiss, so I pulled off Alessio, and then Sebastião started dancing on me. He was very handsy, and he pushed his face closer to mine. I was drunk and fairly delirious on poppers by this point, but I still wasn't really interested in getting together with him. He was grinding on me, and I could feel that his dick was hard in his pants. I really wasn't interested, so I kept pulling back slightly and trying to get back to Alessio. By this point in the night, there was still no sign of Frank. He had my phone and my wallet, as I didn't have any pockets, so I'd given him the responsibility of looking after them for me, and I wanted to go home. So I suggested we look for Frank and then head out. After hunting through the dark room, like someone who dropped their sunglasses in a pool, I finally found him. We all made our way back to the house to get into the hot tub. There is nothing better than sliding into a hot tub after a whole night of drinking. We all took our clothes off and slid in. There was me, Frank, Alessio, Sebastião, a friend they'd picked up called Michael, and Mariana, who'd woken up from her sleep to join us. Someone had rolled a joint and started passing it around. I smoked some, and it hit me pretty hard. This was some strong weed. Normally, I don't have such a lucid trip from smoking weed, but when I laid back in the hot tub, I was counting the light reflections of the water up on the trees above me in almost like a frame per second view. It was extremely bizarre. As I looked across the tub, I could see Sebastião playing with himself under the water. I averted my eyes back to the trees. Somehow that was more calming. In a moment of alcohol and marijuana-induced madness, we all decided to go down to the beach, completely naked. It was one of those fun, only on Fire Island type of experiences. We left the house and headed down to the beach. It was very liberating. All of us completely naked, just walking down to the beach. Alessio was the last to get completely naked. He had shorts on, but he was soon peer pressured into taking them off. The sun was rising, and it was a really beautiful morning. It was about 7 a.m. at this point, and we walked the entire stretch of the Pines Beach and then back up onto the boardwalks. As we were walking back to the house, we walked past many people getting their morning coffees, wishing us a good morning, while we would cover ourselves up with our hands occasionally just out of respect, although these people had pretty much seen it all on this island, so it didn't really matter too much. When we got back to the house, I ran to the outdoor shower to wash a lot of the sand off me, which I collected while I was on the beach. A joint started doing the rounds again, so I took a few drags and then headed back downstairs to bed. Alessio wanted to join me, and I was fine with it. I knew nothing sexual was going to go down as we were both so wasted. By now it was around 8 a.m. and all we wanted to do was sleep. We got into bed together. I snuggled up beside him. We started nodding off. And the door to our room creaked open and Sebastian came in and got on the bed. He started asking if we were horny and wanted to get up to some fun. Alessio and I didn't even get up to anything, and we were already in bed together, so the idea of a threesome was like definitely off the cards. Sebastian then proceeded to play with himself and eventually pull his erect penis out in front of us both. "Come on, it'll be fun, let's play," he said while jerking off over the top of us. Alessio was uncomfortably giggling, as this was one of his close friends. I was just trying to ignore it so he would go away. Alessio told him we weren't interested, but Sebastian wasn't content with this answer and kept begging for us to play with him. I said I was going to sleep. We were so drunk and so high and so tired by this point that now our heads were on the pillow and we just wanted rest. He seemed to eventually surrender and leave the room. I'm not sure at which point this happened, as I had started to fall asleep, and within seconds I was out like a light. During my sleep, I remember hearing the door creak open again. I felt a body sliding under the covers behind me. I was asleep, holding Alessio on my side. I then felt something behind me, pushing between my legs. I vividly remember feeling something slide inside me. It was very slow and wet. It wasn't painful, but I was confused as to what was happening. The feeling was somewhat of an enjoyable physical memory in my body, but my subconscious mind was telling me that this was wrong. I froze in the bed. I then remember that behind me went still. Everything went still. And then Alessio got out of the bed and left me alone in the room with him. In that short moment, I was fucked hard and fast. I was startled into consciousness and realized that Sebastian was now behind me, raping me. It got harder and faster, and then he pulled out. I heard him breathe heavily, groan, and then get up and leave the room. I lay there in shock. Time had gone into reverse sharply and quickly. I didn't know what to think about what had just happened. I didn't fully understand what had just happened. Someone had got into my bed while I was sound asleep, had sex with me, unprotected, finished himself off, and then left. I reached my fingers around to feel my arse. There wasn't any cum, so I assumed that when he pulled out, it was because he came on himself, either that or deep inside. I didn't know what to think. I hadn't said no, but I also hadn't asked for it. Alessio came back into the room and got back into bed with me. I was so confused and shocked that I couldn't process exactly what had happened. I went back to sleep holding on to Alessio and said to myself that I would figure it all out the next day when I woke up. I woke up the following afternoon and went to the bathroom. I stood in front of the basin and looked in the mirror. I looked tired. I saw on the counter a bottle of Truvada. The label read the name Sebastian. I breathed a small, inane sigh of relief. It was a small amount of comfort in a moment of confusion. I went upstairs to get breakfast, and most people were already up drinking champagne and having coffee. I felt a bit delirious. I said good morning to the older host and went out into the garden. Sebastian was there. I didn't want to look at him. His face somehow distorted and unpleasant to me. He walked over to me. "Morning, how are you feeling?" he said to me quietly. "I'm okay, just tired," I replied. I was trying to brush off conversation with him. "Hey, listen, do you remember us having sex last night?" he said to me. I was really taken off guard and didn't know how to respond. I looked around me and rubbed my eyes to hide my embarrassment. "It's just, I felt like I might have been raping you, but then I wasn't sure whether you were just like into the rape fantasy or not, so I was a bit confused." I was startled and lost for words. "Oh yeah, no, it's fine. Don't worry about it," I mumbled. I didn't know what to say, and I barely had any explanation to myself of what had happened last night, let alone to him. I felt very confused and uncomfortable. "I need some water," I said, and walked away from him. I saw Frank and asked him if he'd leave the house and go for a walk with me down to the dock to get some coffee. He obliged, and I started to tell him about what had happened. So, I'm not sure, but I think I was raped last night, I said in my usual matter-of-fact, dry way of saying things. His face was still for a second, and then he started asking me a bunch of questions. He was pretty horrified when I gave him the answers. He knew that Sebastian had been in pursuit of me from the moment I had arrived, so he'd seen the progression of this happening as a bystander. He was furious and started explaining to me that without consent, it's rape. But I never said no, I said to him. I just laid there and just let it happen. This was what confused me the most. I just laid there and let it happen to me. I didn't speak up. I didn't stop it. I didn't defend myself. I just let him fuck me. I let it happen. After this had happened, I left it. I spoke to my friends, Frank, etc., and I let it go. Frank took it upon himself to bring it up back at the house. I had never asked him to do that. He just felt angry and that it needed to be addressed. He mentioned it to the girlfriend who was also staying there that weekend, and chillingly, she was unsurprised by Sebastian's behavior. However, word got back to the owners of the house, and they had a different opinion. At this point, it's worth noting that they are both lawyers, as is Sebastian, and they are all friends. Frank was uninvited to the house with immediate effect, as so was I. They told him that we were no longer welcome and that the issue was to never be spoken about again. One of the owners emailed my friend in a rage saying that I was making it up and that it had never happened. He never spoke to me once or asked me what had happened. He was totally covering for his friend without any questioning whatsoever. I took it upon myself to email the owner of the house because I was so angry that they were taking it out on my friend. It had nothing to do with him. It was my business. I sent him a very lengthy email with a detailed account of the events that night, similar to what I've done here, to which he replied, "Sam, I do not wish to respond or comment." He's a lawyer after all. And so there I was, almost 3 years later, at my art exhibition in Miami, and the two men who owned the house that this happened to me in, who had uninvited me and shunned me out, silenced me and my friend, had just arrived. I now had to face them and ultimately a trauma that I had buried while smiling to other attendees and fans. I took a bite of my pizza and I hid. I felt my body shaking and I didn't want to be there. I lost my appetite and I started drinking. I drank and drank and drank but couldn't get drunk. Instead, I felt more and more mentally unwell and I couldn't face anyone anymore. People were coming into my exhibit and I was ignoring them. I couldn't focus. I saw the couple walk past my exhibition, notice my name on the door, and keep walking. They were laughing. It chilled me and I couldn't stay open any longer. I closed my exhibit early. I received a tweet from a disgruntled fan saying that I didn't pay attention to people and that I was rude. It hurt me, but I didn't have the energy to address it. This was way bigger than that evening. There'd been no justice, just silence and repression. The only way I would win in this circumstance was to become stronger in the face of these two twisted perverts and continue to grow and inspire others to reign over the ownership of their bodies. But to share with you a weaker side of me, that night I closed the doors of my exhibit, took all the bedding from my bed and slept on the floor of the walk-in wardrobe of my hotel room. I was so vulnerable. I wanted to hide away and disappear until it all went away. The next day, I got up and carried on as if nothing had happened. One day, I'm sure I'll have to address all this properly, but until then, I will write it all down as a form of therapy and continue to make empowered work, celebrating sex, self-empowerment, and most importantly, consent. Thank you.
So I'm going to try and follow that. Hopefully this isn't terrible. I'll give a preface. This is a preface to what the work is about. So it's called Thoughts on a Body Too Long Curated, and it's been in the works for a while. My agent would say that perhaps too long. The book ever come out? Watch this space. But no. So the preface will kind of explain what will follow. It's a series of pieces. They're numbered. Pay attention to the numbers, but also don't pay attention to the numbers. The numbers matter, but they also don't matter. Basically, they mean something to me, but perhaps they will mean nothing to anyone else. I will begin. Dear reader, this is the preface. This is my Lusk letter. Find attached the pieces of myself as they have appeared to me. Some thin and fragile like daydreams, and others with the unshakable clarity of Gabriel's visitation. I am a silly, changeable creature. Let this be my epistle to the unbridled. The curated body is crumbling under the weight of expectation. Our bodies are not sites of coherence. There is only madness here, and I want to write with that urgency and that fury and that wonder. These words are perishable, dependent on the air, the very air around them, the air that I breathe now to never breathe again. My relationship to these truths is constantly in flux. They bear witness to my today and not to my tomorrow, to my past, and then perhaps never again a day after that. I think we fear most the truths that reveal us to be animals. Love, our nakedness, sex, rage, and riot are compulsions. That which propels not by decision, but by the blueprint of the universe, dictated by the precise gaps between far-off stars that even at their great distance heat our blood. Our bodies are ruled by the things that we cannot see. Number 1, thoughts on a body too long curated. Perfect posture rots the bone, and tidiness does a disservice to my multitudes, and I do contain multitudes. My heart is in a consumption. Let it be known, I am a miserable thing, and all miserable things must die. Be the kind of thing that you are, and have no desire to be that which you are not. Number 5, I love you, but we are the wreckage of long battled ships, and at least one of us must be bound to something that floats. Number 8, trauma bleeds through generations, meaning I did not understand my father until I became him. Who we are is in our blood, and our blood must pursue us to the bitter end, must it not? Now I know that kings are made by patricide, and neither of us had the courage to become kings. I've seen her gele spiral higher and more powerful than ship masts and skyscrapers and whipping push, shooting bowl. Our bodies are forgetting the strength and summer of their youth. I know that our war drums still echo in these museums when night falls and they believe they are returning home. Ileife was a woman's invention. I know because I have watched my mother carry generations of men on her back without pausing for rest between the millennia. Number 94. The men in my family are the ruins of decaying cities, and all the women are pillars of salt. Do you see now why I could not sleep facing you? Number 99. How to return to the land of the living. Leave this isle of broken hearts and scraped knees. Forget. Number 20. I hate the slack in old turtlenecks, the great distance between our fingers. Things have never quite clung to me as they should. Number 12. Hot house. My dear, what is here cannot be nigh. Blessed are none. The bombs are dropping now. Kiss me, not for fear of loss, but safe in the knowledge that the last thought that you will ever have is how soft my lips are pressed to yours, as Arcadia is lost forever. Number 3. All desire puts you at the mercy of the thing you love. I love you, and I pray still for better days. Number 69. I heard that all fascists are bad kissers. Number 11. All the people I love now work too hard and leave parties early. Number 12. The 8th day. And on the 8th day, God did not rest. Instead, he carved your name into the valleys and the hillsides and the mountaintops, tattooed it on his left thigh, stood with a boombox above his head outside a window in Elysium, painted your waif face on ocean beds, wrote bad sonnets, begged for your love, cried on his way home from Eden, multiplied his multitudes and still fed empty for want of you, invented sin, felt lonely in his own perfection, drowned the world in his tears, devised the apple, fed the 5,000, and then 5,000 more, drank till he forgot, appointed the angels, threw himself in a well, and was lost for all time. Number 70. Grace Jones will outlive us all, and I think that's terrifying and wonderful and glorious. Number 14. Love is a thing you eat. Love is a thing that eats you. I am still trying to fortify this flesh, scrubbing the lust off my skin, trying to hold together a body insistent upon discarding the unforgivable parts of itself. I am remembering the taste of strawberry punch, the nonsensical words and circumlocution that accompanied the slightly irritating scent of Jacquard Noir, and fragments of imperial leather between meals too big to finish. There is still the taste of peanut butter and graham crackers, warm nutmeg gaining purpose in my mother's hands. This is not just metaphor. Love transfigures food into something higher. Loneliness is not profound anymore, no nuance in shades of blue and grey, no message in bargain bin, cardboard supermarket sandwiches. It is a dangerous and unknowable thing to be a person in search of redemption. I do not try and make sense of these things anymore. These are my islands of innocence. Under these orange spires, cheap champagne, this false firmament, disappears my time, time fashioning lovers into friends, friends into strangers, trail of firewater, burning bridges from tongue to nostril, chasing sweat out onto these never mean streets. Their stones resemble candy glass under this very real firmament. Sampling too many lips, flavors too ephemeral to survive between these seasons, not enough bloom to be reborn when we smell this cold stone after a long absence. Never enough to overpound my own pretentious whiskey orange breath. Your still lingering scent, all synthesis and no nature, in my own patriarch's poison, coursing over my skin, repellent, infused with shame. Journeys through food, recurrence of the inauthentic Orient, the overpowering coriander medicated to us on history-soaked wooden benches, light pouring through stained glass windows like boiled sweet aperitif. There have been lovers in every flavor. His clumsiness manifest in his tongue, yours in your eyes, the smell of vodka the morning after scenting pilgrimage, the blue bitterness of sunrise, fermented jalapenos wafting regret, peppermint oil and citrus, and the Egyptian's old cure returning the sun to your voice, still a pale imitation of all of her fire. Think on the boldness of her flesh, the shrill in her green dress, the kink of her hair, the cut in her voice, the sting of her sass like lime on our bruised lips. Empires of red wine, staining lips, dying tongues, reviving stony spirits with our own rich laughter, bringing you back from the depths, sinking you lower than you ever imagined, the way that only grape and witchcraft could. Warm cider, unmitigated, bountiful love, indestructible trust, such unending brightness, a queen abdicating all propriety for love, absolving all responsibility, inviting utter chaos, a natural bitter Jaeger, driving him to flight, and us to fight, and to simmer and to fight, and to smile and to fight, and to kiss and to fight and to fight. More chemistry with purpose. Mixology inviting too much coolness and too little disquiet, flavors not quite bold enough to incite riot, cosmopolitan cool, martini bitter breath. This has turned into one of those letters. I am desperately trying to be something that you can be proud of. I am sorry that I am so empty. I love you. You know that, don't you? In hospital rooms, strange white smoke opening your airways. Wild away her voodoo punch. Whatever flavorsome heritage left in her caramel skin, her witch's brew, extra strong by the full moon, black coffee on the wrong side of sunlight, fueling your crises. The warmth of tea, medicinal, varied, omnipresent, bitter, sweet, fragrant, at once cure and regret, and burying nest, and mother's bosom and friend's embrace on other nights, tears streaming down, salty like the sea. My poor man's petrichor, mouth thick with velvet rage, it is romance, unrejoicing but true to form. This place has an inescapable eternality. I am unlearning my prejudices, inhaling new ones, learning to love bodies with more roundness, boys with scars like bruised fruit. There is this newfound rebellion, and I remember it all. The taste of your collarbone, the brown muscovado sugar of her eyes, the flour on their brows as they laugh bloody murder and exile, the saccharine of their comporting without propriety. I delight in the foreignness of my body, the rolling strangeness of your skin, your cinnamon grin. This is my revisionist history. The paint may never be so bright as it is in the photograph. Your fondness of me never so compelling. Past and future not so symmetrical. Mountains of sugar, and rivers of wine, and molasses rain all turn to decay. My empires are no longer burning. Number 33. I have met our apocalypse. I know because he is beautiful in the way that all endings are. And now I watch him. As Mayans watched almanacs, as Faustus watches the clock, I watch as Galileo, steadfast, watch for the movement of the sun, only to realize it was the very ground upon which he stood that nightly betrayed its position in the heavens. I watched him and I was moved. He was not. Number 7. It is a 26-degree night in Benin City, and my mother is on the dance floor throwing shapes to disco music while the barbecue simmers away in the background. And my God, these are the things that scrape up against utopia. Number 100. Queerness is evidence of more. Evidence of the image and its likeness to peek into the cauldron at the beginning of all things. It is evidence that we, in acting against nature, might usurp her. Queerness is the imagination and the imaginarium, not the grave that we were dug, but what we built on it thereafter. Queerness is evidence of the divine, that all equations may be endlessly rewritten. Queerness is water from the stone, Lazarus from the depths, something from nothing. Number 9. In my will, I leave my body to the alchemists. Let them dissect and search and therein create love potions. Isolate whatever defect of my blood, whatever animus within it, whatever perfumed curse upon my house, whatever star danced above King's College Hospital that night. For I believe there is a ring of Jupiter embedded in my heart, which, like an axe, begins to warp the flesh. Take that from me, which causes me to yearn above all things, to pine and salivate, that which causes this want to be spent like a cigarette, like fuel, like water in the desert. All I know is that lovesick is a kind of sick, and what doesn't make you stronger, well, kill love before it kills you. Number 1231. When we arrived in the city that year, it was the beginning of all time. Hitherto, God had halted the hourglass. Our bodies only erupted into existence on crossing town lines and pressing hand and foot firmly to sandstone and ambition and riot. No doubt we had lived in some sense before. But here we became, and in the becoming. All I remember about those years is that I sung badly, and I wanted you too much, like sundials want sun. And still I drank too much, and I was so foolish, and I'm so sorry for everything that I've become. Number 21, butterscotch. On the days when I feel ugly, there are beautiful boys stripping down by the river. Skin stretched tight over hip bone and collarbone and rib cage. Such is the generosity of the Oxford summer. Dandelion butterscotch boys, even now, their cheeks full of champagne and river water and promised land. I feel ugly just recounting this. It is one of those hot and intolerable evenings. Between conversations about coups and martial music, an aunt tells me that there are lost words that elders would speak to shorten the long journey between Lagos and Benin City. By the bank of this river, I wish I had the words to speak away distance. Eyes bigger than my stomach, lust with an insatiable richness of void. They say, fill it with Hail Marys, fill the gap between want and have with red wine, restore your sanity with 100th time, broken spine classics, exercise, drown desire, pay tip blue, pay they uninvent, boys. I am a cautionary tale. I've always known what you are. Missionary, general, empire. And I am just playing at statesman. And I know that this is just another play about a handkerchief. And I will be wanted at the close, dead at the end, and held complicit in everything that has happened to me. This body is many things, but is not free. Who we are is in our blood, and our blood must pursue us to the very end, must it not? God knows the sun should never set on an empire, and I am just that. Blemish on clean canvas, bruise on peach skin, the sun come to set on your empire one Trinity afternoon. Biting through the purple skin of a plum, I realize that I will never be satisfied, that my teeth will always scrape unhappily at the core of things, bent on bodies still. And there have been so many of you, with too much apology in everything you said, you fucking up the high notes of your solos, reminding me briefly that you were a real thing, and that loving you was not entirely my fault. Of course I loved you, you were nice to me, you dreamy-eyed at group dinners, cannonball wonderwork boys, you colored darling of our nation boys who give shallow hugs because they know my queerness has half-life and they will stink of me in the morning, you. When you kissed me, I caught fire and I've been burning at stakes ever since. You wear my trauma so well. Boys, all true and sweetness and no satisfaction. And now that I have the words, for the longing and the labor of you, I am a little more whole. There is a warm evening in a whispering grayscale California mini-mart, 15 years before Desire. The air crackles with potential energy, the gap between what I was and what I was to be. The refrigerator shelves are stacked high with strawberry punch. 15 years before boys and bad metaphors before dreaming. In the vivid wantlessness of yesterday, a butterfly flaps its wings, and I am thrown head first into a desire that I could neither want nor fathom. How could anyone love after dreaming? Number 2. You are Sagan's galaxy. I should know. I traced the starlight in your back as you slept. Number 10. For my sister. I keep a photograph of you and I when we were young on my bedside table. It is a kind of contagion magic, a ritual by which I hope to overwhelm the worst parts of me with your goodness, unwed the shame from my very bones. Number 11. The people you love do not live forever, and that is the first tragedy from which all others follow. Number 24. You keep that love letter in your back pocket like a failed Chekhov's gun. You are a particular kind of masochist. Yours is always a play about subtext, the spaces in between things it's not said, in the undeclared, the gaps between hands never quite held. He will die not knowing that you loved him. Number 72. This is my Jeremiah hat. For what can follow this but ruin? Number 23. You're all terrible, and I love you. Number 204. To the girl standing outside with the bleach blonde buzz cut all that time ago, who, when I was having a particularly tough night in my bar shift, offered to make me dinner sometime. Thank you. I love you. Come find me. Number 30. You think you can party to avoid the reckoning, but maybe the party is the reckoning. Number 13. I have danced this dance long enough to know I want does not get. And yet, I want. Is there a truer prayer? Number 45. In those days, we cast our tutors, our fathers, and our lovers for the cardinal sin of not embodying all three. Whispered imprecatory prayers into the cheap glasses of cheap wine that gave us the courage to fuck strangers and each other. Those early years, every last one of us looked at the other as if through cracked Technicolor glass. Kaleidoscopic visions, shining, distorted, magnified. And we called it love. Number 99. All speech is incantation. Number 77. I sometimes think that I love you is what I say, what we say, when there's nothing left to say. Or perhaps, because there is everything left to say in this world, is why we say I love you. It is an approximation to condense all life into a single breath. Number 666. The kiss is the enemy of the partition. Partition prevents kiss, but kiss dissolves all need for partition. Number 0. A dedication. To the women in my family. I am not often the best version of myself, but on the days I am, it is because of you. Thank you. What next? Where's Ray? Any questions? Like, oh my God, did I even? Yeah, so I'm Otamere Guobadia.
I'm Sam Morris.
But yeah, I guess this is meant to be an interactive session. You can ask, honestly, you can ask me anything. But also, if you have no questions and there are no prompts, then we can all go have a boogie. But does anyone have any questions? Oh my God, yes, please.
How long did it take you to write that? Firstly, that was amazing.
Oh, that's so sweet. Thank you.
Much. Please publish it. I will read it. I'll read the fuck out.
God, talk to my agent. I meant to have had a meeting with her like a couple weeks ago, and I missed it out. It's fine. No, it's coming. It's coming inevitably. It's just it changes all the time, and also some of that work is like 5 years old. Some of that I wrote literally when I was in university. Some of it I wrote, months ago, like recently. So it's always changing. I'm always deciding I hate parts of it, or some parts of it are too immature. But I like the bits of it that are immature. So it's like a work in progress. But yeah, it's been many years in the making. It was like a pandemic in the middle. So, but yeah, it's a collection of things. It's constantly changing, but it's been a while. But yeah, I hope that kind of answers your question. But yeah, it's taken ages. Hello.
How did the random order come about?
Okay.
Is it just random, or is it really powerful?
It isn't entirely random, but also like some of it is random. Some of the numbering is random. Some of the numbering is just it has personal references like years. Hello, look who it is. We're just doing we just finished the reading. We're doing the interactive Q&A session, but we don't really know how this is meant to go. So it's taking questions from the audience. But no, the order doesn't the order kind of matters, but also it kind of doesn't. I also think part of the reason I like the order, and I also like the arbitrariness of it, is because something I talk about in my one-pager and in the slightly longer preface is that I don't think that anyone's mind works in the logical order in which people publish books or essays. Like our minds iterate, they repeat themselves. Like we jump from one thing to another without much thought. Like no one's mind is as clear as the thing that ends up on the page. And so that is part of what I'm trying to represent with this book, is the fact that like my mind is all over the fucking place at any given fucking point in time. I'm repeating myself. Phrases get stuck in your head and they repeat themselves throughout different things. And like that is some of what I'm trying to represent is the madness of every mind that we pretend isn't there. We pretend that everything's like it's logical, like thing after another, but nothing is like that at all. Nothing in my head especially. Like it's a fucking mess. No worries. Anyone else? Yeah.
Yeah, so this is a book I published last year. I actually brought 5 free copies here tonight, and there's 4 upstairs in the bookshop left, I think, because I think one was already taken. So if you did want to grab one, then you can go upstairs and grab one. But you have to be quick for that. But yeah, so I published this last year.
Who published it?
I published it myself. Yeah, it was a lot of work. It's a lot of work. It's called Don't Fall in Love, Sam. Yeah.
Do you want to tell them how you came about that title?
It's a bit like what you were just saying, though. It's like a collection of like madness, like lots of different, I don't know, lots of different moments and thoughts and feelings and stuff, like all condensed into a kind of book. So yeah, it was quite similar to what you described, actually.
Yeah, but why is it called Don't Fall
Why
in Love,
is it called
Sam?
that? There is there is a chapter in the book called "Don't Fall in Love, Sam."
Do you not want to give it away?
Yeah, it's a moment. It was like when we went through the editing process and got to that chapter. My editor was like, "This is the title of the book, just so you know." And I was just like, "Okay." I didn't really even get much choice. He was just like, "This is the fucking title of the book. Like, we have to go with this." It was something that was once said to me, so it was literally it's a quote. So that was why it worked.
Men are trash.
Yes.
You had a question?
So Sam, what did you, obviously you do a lot of like, your erotica side, you're more kind of, there's a lot of exposure through that level. Did you find writing and like going kind of so deep inside yourself more difficult or easier?
I've always written like as a form of therapy like my whole life. So it was something that I've always just done. For me, it was quite a nice moment for me to like release something that was like very private in comparison to the work I normally put out, which is like very, what's the right term? I don't know. It's very curated. And so it was nice to put out something that was very raw. And I thought it was important for me to do that, particularly for my younger followers. Yeah, I don't know. So it was pretty much like a journal, and I was like, I just feel like I needed a fucking journal like that to read when I was like a teenage gay guy that didn't know the fucking clue what he was doing, and so I was like, I'm just gonna put it out. It's gonna be like, so this is the first time I've ever actually read anything from the book live. And like I was like freaking out because I was like, I don't know. I was like, I don't know how I'm gonna read anything from this. This is like so. I was like, it's just very personal. So it's like it's easy to just like release something, right? Publish it, and you're just so disconnected from it. And then people message you and they're like, oh, I like really like connected with it, blah blah blah. But it's like sitting here and reading it is quite intense. But yeah, if that answers your question, I don't know. I've like rambled, sorry.
Yeah. Anyone else? We good? Oh.
Mine is just Sam Morris.
And I'm at Otamere on everything. Just my first name. Oscar Tango Alpha Mike. I'm easy to find. Not the phonetic. Honestly, when like your name is fucking Sam Morris. Of course you don't need fucking phonetic alphabet. You try speaking to white people on the phone.
I think I mispronounced your name for like a good few
like
years.
Everyone knows, but it's fine. I accept. I give people poetic license over my name. I don't have time to start correcting everyone. But yeah, anyone else? Feel free. You can ask us anything. No, within reason.
No, not at the moment. I don't know. No, for me it felt like just putting it out in this was my because this was a long time ago. So obviously, like I'm sure we've all got trauma in this room in different ways, and so we all deal with it in different ways. For me, like putting it into this and putting it out into the world and letting other people connect with it and being like, "Fuck, this also happened to me." I don't know. That was a healing process in a way. So no, and I don't think I would, because I think it would be. I think that would be more traumatic for me than just like dealing with the way that I dealt with it. But thanks for asking that.
If you want us to pull up, just let me know.
Cool, no.
We'll pull up. Anyone else? Don't be shy if you do have a question, honestly. But if not, I guess that I've been Otamere. It's been Sam.
Yeah, thank you
dynamic
for
to
all
it.
coming down here,
Thank you for
listening to our
coming. That's so
stories.
lovely. Thank you. Thank you for coming. Honestly, like together. Yeah, like together. The important thing is that you look best. Like that's like when you're like when you're taking a selfie, the important thing, like everyone else can show it. It's fine, like this stuff. Like even me.
I'll get those, so you'll have copies of the batch.
What about I just never smile with those people.
So serious.
No, but that's very, very
I'm cool.
I'm so bad at this.
What's your phone?
But you want me to send it to your email?
Got your photographer. Oh, I need to make sure I don't just leave my
You know how people do. Like I do. Right? Like the first thing properly. There'll be more. I'd love to say more. Like but you didn't really do that. When you're trying to fake it, it's stressful trying to fake. Which is why, like I don't even. This is why I don't like you said. I just like use it. It's as easy, but like also it's so weird about to wait for your own book. I'm glad you liked it. I wasn't really. I was like every time like I feel like every time I do it one more time, I'm kind of. This is really giving what it's supposed to say. I'm like, I'm sorry.
100%. I can verify that.
Okay, I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Can I get your socials again?
Of course you can.
Yeah.
I'll just,
It's probably easier.
You did
So,
really
dude,
well.
honestly, when you were talking about spelling your name to white people on the
yeah, I literally, that's why I have phonetic alphabet.